Uh, I'm reluctantly doing this test, see how it goes. So this radio is truly exciting. This is the Wouxun, well, I say Wouxun, I think it's also pronounced Wouxun KG-Q10H. This radio I was sent to by buytwowayradios.com, and this is a brand new radio which is just out on the market, and there's some really exciting features about it. This is a quad band transmit radio. It transmits, that's right, on 6 meters, 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and also 1.25 meters, 220. This radio is true quad band. It comes here with 2 antennas. This antenna that I've got here is the 50 megahertz to 220 megahertz antenna, and it also comes with a standard 2 and 70 centimeter antenna here, which I've still got in the packaging because I've been testing it out on 6 meters. I was very interested to hear about this radio purely because of the 6 meter aspect of it. My other 6 meter handheld radio that I do have is a Yaesu VX8, and this radio you can't get anymore. In actual fact, quad band radios, well, quad, any radio, basically handheld radio that comes with 6 meters in it, is very rare indeed. That's not the only feature that this radio though has. It also has 999 memory channels. It has NOAA weather alerts and weather channels built in. It also has GPS location data that you can have between 2 of these radios, so you can actually track each radio. It's got crossband repeater, and we're going to talk a little bit about crossband repeat. 6 watts output, IP67 waterproof. It's got USB-C charging. It's got a whole heap of stuff. So we're going to go through some of those in this review video today, and maybe do a couple of little tests to see how it actually stacks up. Of course, the mandatory very first thing to do is this, the manual. It is ridiculously comprehensive. This is 1 pages long, and it has pretty much everything that you need to know about every feature in this radio. And it's written in very easy to understand English, which is excellent because some of these radios, Wouxun are one of the better Chinese sellers, and it's very easy to get manuals which don't really make an awful lot of sense. So in the case with this one, it is been well written by buytwowayradios.com. This is a radio is exclusive to them, so if you want to check it out, there is a link in the description below. So basically what you get is you get those 2 antennas, as I mentioned. You get a belt clip, you get the manual, which we've got a couple of screws here for the belt clip. I called that a belt clip, I mean a lanyard. So you get those, and you also get this charger as well, which is a drop-in charger with a US AC adapter attached to it. Now, the good thing that I do like about this is that you can unplug it, and you can put whatever adapter that you like for your country. So for instance, this one here is I believe it's a 12 volt half an amp charger, which it is. If you just get a 12 volt charger with a DC plug, then you can plug this in and use the drop-in charger. Now, putting the drop-in charger aside, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, this does have USB-C charging directly on the radio itself. And you'll notice that all around is all of these buttons are all sealed. They all have, like this one here, that you can't actually access the mic and the speaker jack without undoing these 2 screws. And there's a rubber boot here on the USB-C, and there's also rubber here around the PT. There's 2 PTT buttons and the 2 programmable buttons here on the side. And there's also all sealed along the top of the radio here, and also the battery clips in pretty snug. Now the reason for this is because this radio is IP67, which means that it's got protection against dust. Dust can't get into the radio, and also water immersion of up to 1 meter for half an hour. So we're going to do that test a little bit later on in this review video. The battery itself is a 7.4 volt 3000 milliamp hour lithium ion battery, which is quite a large capacity. I noticed that they've also got these security codes here for the Wouxun products, and I guess that's to stop any counterfeit products from being made. And you can see here that the radio also has one of those on there too. Transmit 50 to 54, 222 to 225, 144 to 148, and 420 to 450. So this radio is locked to the ham radio bands. There's also the FCC ID written down here too, if you want to have a look at that up on fccid.io. and the battery just snaps in place, and it's all quite nice. It feels very, very rugged. Quite a nice looking radio. I've got this one in blue, and it's available in different colors as well. Now this radio also comes with a superheterodyne receiver, so the frequency ranges that are quoted are 50 to 54 megahertz, 76 to 108. It also has airband receive, so you can go to an airband frequency and go into the menus and set this up as AM. So you turn that on to AM receive and you can listen to AM. We'll do a bit of a test and comparison video between this and another radio to see how it sounds on AM in a little while. It also receives 136 to 174, 222 to 225, 320 to 480 and 714 to 999 megahertz. It has some interesting terms, and let me just come in here a little bit and show you. There's a button here. The main one here is area. If you click on that, that actually is a band button. It switches between the two dual VFOs here. So you've got the top VFO and the bottom VFO. Now, that would normally be referred to as band, but obviously it's called area on this radio for some reason, so that's just probably the first thing that you'll be looking for. The other thing too is that when this radio ships, it comes already pre-programmed with channels. So to switch out of channel mode, you just hold TDR and mode, and you can see there we had channel mode. Now this is the frequency showing, but still in channel mode, and now we've got another alphanumeric tag frequencies. So as you go through here, you can see all of these pre-programmed ones in, and this comes with programming software that you can download and also reprogram the radio. But just holding that button down, now we're in regular VFO mode. The two PTTs on the side here, sometimes it takes a little while to get your head around. So there's a PTT2, which is here at the top, and there's a PTT1, which is down here at the bottom. You can customize these in the radio, but at the moment they're actually set in a way that I don't really understand why they would operate that way, and I'll demonstrate that shortly. By pressing the TDR mode button, you can also just make it a single receive display rather than two displays, or you can have the dual frequency display as well. If you long press on the area button, it will switch your bands that are available in the radio. It's a bit weird because you go to 2 meters to 440 and then to 223 and then to 50 megs and then up to 900 megs and then 350 megs. It's sort of not really from low to high or from high to low. It's kind of a bit random. But anyway, I think it prioritizes 2 meters and 70 centimeters. So if you're on 2 meters here and you want to go to 70 centimeters, then you can hold down that area button and it goes there too. So this radio also has crossband repeat. So just by pressing the RPT button, that has now enabled the crossband repeat. Then anything that's received on this frequency would be crossband repeated onto here. And there's some settings around crossband repeat in the menus as well, which we'll go into in more detail. There are two menus in this radio. One is referred to as the area menu. Let's just call that the band menu for now. So that allows you to go in and change various things that would be related to your particular frequency, or your band actually, that you're running on. So squelch, TX, power, the wide narrows, the frequency steps, any tones that you need, shifts or offsets for repeaters, the channel names, any sort of mute modes that you need, and there's a few other items in here too. The AM menu that I mentioned before. If you hold down the menu button, this gets you here now into the system menu, and this has a lot of extra features that you can change and decide what you want to set in this menu. The first one here is active brightness. This allows you to go in and change the brightness of the screen, so you can go up and down and select, and as you can see there, it's now dimming or getting brighter as you go. The default here is set to 4. I find that that's probably just a little bit too dim. You probably need to go a little bit higher. So I've got that set at 8. Now, one of the drawbacks that I did notice about this radio is that the backlight and the screen is not very visible in pure sunlight. If I go outside and just show you what it looks like here in the shadows, and also here in the studio, it looks quite easy to see the screen, and everything's, you know, pops out quite well. So that's great. But in sunlight, if you're in direct sun, it actually washes out the entire screen, and you can't see anything on the screen at all. You need to physically put a shadow over the top of the radio. So that's just one thing to keep in mind with this radio, which is a little bit unfortunate, but might not be a real problem for you unless you're using it in direct sunlight. Display theme, this radio is pretty cool actually, because you can go in and change different display themes. By default, black 2 is the most default. Not the most default, the default. You've got cool, rain. There's not a Rubicon theme in here, and I will say I have used that, and it's probably not my favorite, so sorry Randy if you're watching this. If we go in and let's change it to, say, a rain theme, and it's looking a little bit purplish here now, and you've got yellow as your frequency display and also your menu. So you can cycle through those themes and decide which one you want. In actual fact, I might keep this one because it's a little bit easier to see. Menu item number 13, the Roger beep. Now we get to the bit about PTT, and I mentioned this before. This radio has 2 PTT buttons, one for each VFO. Now, these are labelled, again, a little bit weird. You've got PT2 at the top and PTT1 at the bottom. I would have expected them to go 1 and 2, but that's just me. So if you go into PTT1, this is where you can assign the key assignments and how they operate and what they should do. So at the moment, by default, they will come set as PTT1, which is the bottom button, will transmit on the main channel. PTT2 will transmit on the secondary channel. So let's just go and let's select those accordingly. So we've got PTT2 on secondary, PTT1 on main. There's a bit of a problem with this, because if I press this PTT2 button, purely because you've got the VFO here at the top, it actually transmits down on the bottom frequency, because this bottom frequency is labelled as secondary, because we've got secondary down the bottom. If I press PTT1, we're at the top and we're transmitting on the main. So that's kind of the reverse logic to what I would normally think or assign this to. And in reverse, if we click the band button, area band button, that then moves the main to the bottom. So now if we press the PTT2 button, we get transmitting down here on the main, and if we press the top, we're transmitting here on the top, which is now the secondary. So it's a little bit in reverse, it's reverse logic, but the good news is you can go in and you can change that. So if you just hold down that menu button, go back into PTT1. Now, PTT1 again is the bottom, so what we want to do is we want to set that to area B. Now, there's a few other things that you can do here. You can change it to various other things, which is detailed in the manual about what they do, but I want to select this to area B. So let's just go area B, and PTT2, which is the top, is going to be area A. So then what happens is, now when I come in and I transmit, it's always going to transmit at the top. The bottom button is always going to transmit at the bottom. If I swap them around, it's still transmitting the bottom, still transmitting at the top. So that's just something to keep in mind, and a good little tip for setting up the PTT key assignments. Now, by default, out of the box, I tried to dial my All-Star node using this radio, and the DTMF did not work. And I had to go in here and have a look and figure out why, and it's in here, menu item number 31. This was set to off. So what this is this is sidetone. So the manual says that this is when DTMF tones are transmitted from the radio, whether they're heard from the speaker. If you have off, then you'll be dialing a number, but you won't hear the DTMF. So if we go in here and select off, and let's just send a DTMF tone, you can see there that I heard it going through the radio, but if I don't hear it transmitting through the speaker of the radio at the moment, and I've got the volume turned up. So that was a little bit confusing to me. So you have to come into here, go back down to that menu item number 31, and select sidetone. Now I select DTMF. I don't use the other IDs in the radio, so just select DTMF. And now when you transmit, you've got the DTMF so that you know that it's working and you can hear that. Battery type, menu item number 39. This shows the little icon up here in the top, what you want it to show. Currently it's set to battery icon. I can set that to a voltage, so now that's gone to 8.3 volts, or I can also set it to a percentage, so it's 100% at the moment. So I'm going to leave it as battery percentage because I like that. RPT mode. Now this is where we get into the repeater, crossband repeater settings that are in this radio. So there's two settings here. These are the directions of the crossband repeat. So the first one is XDIR-PT. This is set so that the receiving frequency in the primary band area, this is the receiving frequency of the crossband repeater, and the transmitting frequency is in the secondary area or the secondary band. So this is kind of like a one-way crossband repeat, so that it will only receive on one side and transmit on the other in one direction. You can't go the other way. Now the other setting is the opposite. This is XTWR-PT. This means that both the primary and secondary receive areas, they are both receivers, and whichever area or band receives the signal first, that will then retransmit it in the other direction, which is the most common, but you might not want to set it that way. You might want to set it with just a one-way crossband repeat. RPT speaker, this determines whether you actually hear any stations or hear any signals coming through the speaker of the radio when it's in crossband repeat. PTT, likewise, this also specifies whether you can transmit on the radio if it's being used as a crossband repeater. RPT tone, this enables or disables it. There's a squelch tail at the end of when the radio is receiving a transmission in crossband repeat mode. You probably want to turn this off so that you don't get a squelch tail every time you do it. So I'm really impressed with the audio quality of this radio. So let's just do a bit of a test and see how it sounds. I'm going to leave the radio here on 146/500. I'm going to go out of the room and do a test here using my VX8, and I'm going to transmit back to this so you can hear what the receive audio sounds like.
This is VK7HH, VK7 Hotel, doing an audio test on 146/500.
Now I'm going to do an audio test back the other way, so let's listen to the transmit audio quality on the VX8 coming from the Wouxun.
VK7HH, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, audio quality from the Wouxun.
To take this test one step further, I'm going to now test this using my All-Star node. I'm going to dial into a parrot node and see what the audio sounds like, because sometimes these radios can be a little bit low on audio. Let's just do a test and see what it says. A VK7HH testing audio 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Audio level is pretty good. VK7HH testing audio 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So now let's hook this radio up to the service monitor and let's just see how much output power this thing does and compared to the specifications that are claimed. Now there's low, medium, high and ultra high as well. So let's just try high power. Let's start from below. Let's go the low power setting first and see what we get. So we're looking at this number here, transmitting, and we've got 1.45 watts. So that's on the low power setting. Let's now go to medium, and this test is done on 2 meters. We got 2.07 watts. Let's go to high power. High power is 4.7 watts.
Transmit power, enter.
Now ultra high on 2 meters. We've got 5.2 watts. Let's now go to 440. 440 low, 0.8 watts. Okay. Medium is 2.5 watts. 440 high power is 5.05 watts. Ultra high power on 440, and we're getting almost 6 watts on ultra high power. So now we're going to do a test on 223 megahertz. Low power here. On 223 low power we get 0.4 watts. On medium power we get 0.86 watts.
Menu transmit power, enter.
On high power we get 1.4 watts. Ultra high power on 1.25 meters we get 1.4 watts. Let's now test 6 meters, and we've got 0.8 watts on low. Mid or medium, we got 2.2 watts. High power on 6 meters is 4.3 watts. And let's now switch to ultra high power, 4.75 watts. Now the next thing to test is we need to look at spurious emissions, because that is always something that is a big concern. So let's go to our spectrum analyzer, ultra high power here on 50 megs. Let's select an easier frequency to remember. 52 megahertz. So there's our carrier here. Let's now go to our second harmonic, -5 on our second harmonic. Let's go to our third harmonic, 156 megahertz. And we have dead on -16. Fourth harmonic, 208. And we're good, we're -22 there. Our next harmonic, fifth I think we're up to now, and we're good, -22. Looks like we're good again. So we could keep on going. Let's just increase our span here a little bit. So I'm sitting at 500 megahertz here in the middle with a span of 950 megs, and if I start transmitting, it'll take a little while for it to update, but there we go. We've got our first fundamental. There's our second harmonic, third harmonic. Now we know that our third harmonic was good, so everything below this line, we've got a couple of spares here, but they're all below that line, so that's good. It's just that second harmonic. It's 10, 20, 30, 40, still 40 dB below the fundamental. Let's now go to 2 meters. So we've got our fundamental here. It looks like our second harmonic's still a little bit high. Third harmonic's good. So there's our fundamental. Let's now go to our second harmonic on 293, and we're only down at 5 dB. So we're a little bit on the high side there. Go to our third harmonic, and our third harmonic is good. So the next thing we're going to test is the crossband repeat. Now, I currently have crossband repeat turned off, and I'm going to be receiving here on 146/500, and if you see there, let me just turn that tone off. You can see there that I'm receiving, and the signal generator is currently set at -122 there. We want to enable crossband repeat mode, and what this is going to do is it's going to now transmit everything here is on 146/500. It's going to transmit it on 440.1. Now the interesting thing will be is if the radio gets internal desensitization. In other words, that weak signal, will it still be transmitted through onto 70 centimeters without any interference? Now if I turn this back on, you can see there that it's not quite. It's as soon as it starts transmitting, it desenses and then it loops back around. So let's just turn up the amplitude and see how high we have to go. So that's -122. So about -120. So if we turn that off, turn crossband repeat back on, and it goes into that looping type of issue. We need to turn up the signal by we need to turn it up by about 4 dB. So it's about 4 dB. Let's now do it the other way. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our receive frequency in as 440.1, and we're going to put our transmit on 146.5. So now we're going to do the same test but in reverse. Turn crossband repeat on. And that's interesting. Let me just see. On 70 centimeters, I was on low power before on that crossband repeat. However, on 2 meters, I'm on ultra high. So let's just back that off to high power. Turn that back on. And we're desensing. There's 2, there's 4, there's 6, there's 8. Okay, wow. With the radio transmitting on full high power, we need to put -38 dBm into this for it to not desense. So if I turn this off, you'll see the difference here. If I turn that down, you'll hear how it's a little bit noisy. When I turn off crossband repeat, it comes noise free. So crossband repeat, whilst it would work with really, really strong signals, it does get desensitized a little bit. Now this radio is also full duplex, so you can see I'm listening on 146/500. If I put in a signal on 146/500 VK7HH testing, I can also transmit on 440.1 or 70 centimeters at the same time, VK7HH testing. So in that regards, it's full duplex, so you could use this for satellite. There will be a bit of desensitization whilst you're receiving on one frequency and transmitting on the other. So that's just something to keep in mind. So this radio can receive airband transmissions. I've got it set here on my local tower on AM. Now, I did listen earlier on and it's not really that impressive. The audio was just hard to understand. The tower was hard to understand. The aircraft was also hard, especially compared to this radio, which is a bit cheaper as well. I don't think that you're probably going to buy this for airband. It does receive it, but I'll show you some examples of what I'm talking about.
Jetstar 723, wind 340 degrees, 12 knots, clear to land. Background, just 23 for Bay number 8. Jetstar 723, ground, back to Bay 8. Bay 8, just 723. You'll be able to Foxtrot coming. Yeah, no Foxtrot, no one.
So this radio is IP67 rated, which means it can sit in water a metre deep for half an hour. So I'm reluctantly doing this test. I've got it sitting on FM radio, so let's put it underwater for a little bit and see how it goes. I can still hear the audio, listen. It's been underwater for a little while now. I think it's time to pull it out of the bucket and... Oh, okay. So the speaker's a little bit... Oh, there we go. No, we're good. I think what we'll do is... Let's... Oh dear. Okay, so I've dried off the radio a little bit and I've blown out some of the water out of the speaker. It still sounds a little bit tinny. See if that'll knock out any of the water, because I could still see some coming out. Had it up at full volume, and I think we're back to normal now.
VK7HH.
A little bit of distortion, I think, as there's still a little bit of water left in the speaker, but that should dry over time. VK7HH testing.
Audio level is just about right. VK7HH testing.
So this Wouxun radio has quite a lot of features, but it is also relatively more expensive than some other cheaper options out there, such as this radio from TalkPod, this radio here from Quanchang, or the Baofeng UV5R. If you want to find out which radio suits you best, then there is a link to some video reviews on all of these radios that will appear on the screen now.